A CEO that was once derided at Fox News as a socialist for paying his workers a starting wage of $70,000 per year is now having the last laugh. This is according to a recent article in HuffPost that writes, back in 2015, the tech entrepreneur shocked the business world by slashing his own $1.1 million pay package to help fund a minimum living wage of $70,000 for all workers at his credit card processing company, Gravity Payments. So now that's, of course, really good PR. Props on that. Price's decision led him to being heavily criticized as a socialist on Fox News and Fox Business. In fact, I've got some of those videos right here.
Have you seen the CEO of the Seattle-based company who raised the minimum wage at his credit card processing company to $70,000 per year?
Lunatic of all lunatics, Dan Price, CEO of Gravity Payments.
I hope this company is a case study in MBA programs on how socialism does not work, because it's going to fail.
Thoughts on this guy? Personally, I think he's a socialist, but
This is the man who's doing it. Are you a socialist?
Well, look, I don't support a minimum wage increase because it's a job killer.
Socialist. Crazy socialist. Socialism's scary, paying people $30 an hour while giving up some of your own pay. Right. Now, look, obviously, cutting your own salary and paying people more will somehow end in your business failing somehow, because socialism, right? Well, I mean, what happened since? Were they right? Was the late Rush Limbaugh correct? And his assessment is Gravity out of business. Well, they caught up to him. And in the years since, according to Price, he has been hailed as a success by Harvard Business School and Inc. magazine, which noted the number of employees at Gravity has doubled, while the value of payments that the company processes has gone from $3.8 billion to $10.2 billion per year. In fact, Price himself touted his business on social media. Here's what he said. Since our $70K minimum wage was announced 6 years ago today, our revenue tripled, headcount grew by 70%, customer base doubled, babies had staff grew by 10%, had by staff. 70% of employees were able to pay down their own personal debt. The homes that were bought by employees grew tenfold. 401k contributions grew by 155%. Turnover dropped by half. 76% of employees are engaged at work, 2 times the national average. Customer attrition fell to 25%, below national average. They expanded to a new Boise office and enacted, even though Boise has a much lower standard of living than Seattle, they still enacted a $70,000 minimum wage there. And then their highest paid employee makes 4 times the lowest paid employee, down from 33 times. So that's a lot of positivity coming from this company. That's great. So now, look, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're near the end of it, hopefully, and a lot of businesses were affected by this. A lot of businesses were affected by the pandemic, and they were also affected. So and went through a tough time. In fact, Price says at the start of the pandemic, we lost about half of our revenue overnight. Now that's disastrous. So now what happened as a result? Well, he said that our employees were so invested that they took voluntary temporary pay cuts to prevent layoffs. So as a result, they ended up weathering the storm, paying everyone back for the wages they had lost, and then are now giving out raises to people who are still there. So, turns out, if the company is loyal to you and treats you well and doesn't treat you like you're a disposable piece of shit, it turns out that company, those employees will return loyalty to that company. It's really simple, okay? Happy workers make productive workers. It's 101, okay? It really simple. Now, he also explained what inspired this decision to cut his own salary to $70,000 a year and raise workers' pay. He had found out that an employee was working a second job at McDonald's. And then, unlike, a lot of the CEOs, like somebody like Jeff Bezos, for example, Jeff Bezos was like, the fuck do I care? Get back to work. I don't care if you have to pee in a bottle or, poop in a bag. Go get back to work. I don't care if you have a second job. This guy's like, you have to work a second job? Why do you have to work a second job? Well, it's because I don't make enough. Oh, shit. I'm a bad CEO. I'm not taking good care of my workers. Well, I got to do something about it. Now, and that's what happened. So, yes, he took that drastic pay cut, but then said this, that I don't miss the millionaire lifestyle. This is somebody who, again, said, I'm gonna pay my workers fairly. And I'm gonna make the same as my workers. And that's it. There you go. And, you can take quite a few lessons from this. For one, employee loyalty and success. Okay. It turns out, again, you can have success by paying your staff well. And of course, that involves not being a selfish asshole. I think, and I think that's the point that pissed off people at Fox News the most, and Rush Limbaugh and those on the right. In their world, they believe that being rich makes you better than other people. Like the whole fact of being rich is what makes you better. And the fact that, you do whatever you have to do to claw your way up and step over people, well, that just makes you stronger and better and smarter. Hey, you're a smart person because you learned how to extract labor more efficiently and squeeze every single penny out of your workers while still keeping their wages low so that you can take home more money. Well, that just makes you a business genius. I mean, even with Donald Trump, who screwed, people over and didn't pay people, didn't pay contractors, and then would declare bankruptcy and keep all the money for himself. They looked at that and said, yes, that's our man. Yes, that's how you do it. You're a business genius. Yes, not paying your taxes, business genius. We want to be like that guy. They're missing the point. But then for them, greed is moral. It's true. So if you're not extracting every single penny that you're legally allowed to, or even sometimes illegally, in the case of wage theft, you are a socialist, you are a communist, and you will fail. But he didn't fail. And that's because, of course, the workers had his back. They had his back because he ended up having their back. He might have failed, too, during this pandemic, like many other businesses have. But his workers ended up stepping up. They sacrificed. They took a pay cut. Because guess what? He also had taken a pay cut earlier on their behalf. And so I'm going to share a secret with some bigwig CEOs, okay? It turns out workers, we generally don't like it when our jobs go away. We don't like it when the business that we work at fails, okay? Guess what? We kind of want to have a job, right? But we want to have a job that treats us well, okay? And if your employer pays you fairly for your labor, respects you, even gives you a say in the workplace, well, then that company is going to do better. In fact, that's why I'm a big fan of worker co-ops. Now, this particular company is not a worker co-op. But when it comes to pay, they do have a similar pay structure where you have everybody basically making around the same amount of money and having that floor of $70,000, which is over 30, I think somewhere around $35 an hour. I might be off on that a bit. That's a pretty good wage. It's a pretty fair wage, at least for me. Now, worker co-ops in the U.S., and there's over 400 of them in the country, actually maintain a 2-to-1 pay ratio between the highest paid and the lowest paid workers, which is, again, kind of similar to what's going on at Dan Price's company. And so, by contrast, the average U.S. corporation has a CEO worker pay disparity of about 300 plus to 1. Now, the worker co-ops don't have a CEO, but in this case, the CEO is making similarly to the similar amount to the workers. And that's what's important. And yet, Fox News wanted to call this socialism. But again, a co-op is actually more along those lines of socialist. In fact, in a co-op, workers run the business. They own the means of production, in this case, for the company. And just like in this case, these companies tend to do a little bit better. In fact, a report by the Democracy at Work Institute and the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops shows that worker co-ops have a higher than average success rate than traditional businesses. Those that are 6 to 10 years old have a 25.6% success rate, while those over 26-year-old have a 14.7% success rate. By comparison, U.S. small businesses that are 6 to 10 years old have an 18.7% success rate, while those older than 26% have an 11.9% success rate. So generally, worker co-ops, and maybe it's because there are so few of them and that number is skewed, but from what I can tell so far from those numbers is that, yeah, more of them tend to do a little bit better than small business, and that we need to look further into that and maybe see something like that on a larger scale to see if worker co-ops are generally better and last longer. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be, why they wouldn't last, why they wouldn't be better, because what you have is a more invested workforce of worker owners. There are, of course, some drawbacks. Maybe there are some people who are worker owners that don't necessarily know, as much as some people who are dedicated to creating the business. Generally, that could be a case. Another case could be lack of capital, because you don't have the capital owners coming in and doing some heavy investing. And there are other issues, of course. However, generally, worker co-ops tend to be, from what we've seen, better. Now, you might be wondering why, in this case, I'm talking about worker co-ops to begin with. Because it turns out that not every CEO is Dan Price. Dan Price made so much news because he seems to be a pretty decent person. Okay. For every Dan Price, though, we've got 100 Jeff Bezos, whose employees might have to piss in a bottle while he brings home the majority of the money. If anybody couldn't afford to pay his employees 30 plus an hour, it's somebody like Bezos. And unlike Price, I doubt Bezos would even miss the money or even notice that the money was gone. But it would make a huge difference in the lives of the workers with no ill effects on the company itself. In fact, as you can see, doing this helped the company. The greed of a CEO, however, does nothing to help the company. That actually hurts in the long run. And so the success of Price and his company, as well as the data on worker co-ops that we have so far, shows that we do need a transition to a system where we have more democracy in the workplace and more fairness in the workplace between the CEOs and the actual people who produce the labor. It's so much better. It sounds like so much better of a system than our current broken Gordon Gekko-esque Gilded Age bullshit system where all the money flows to the top. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.